Trump had influence in the Indiana primary, or, oh, look, Trump had influence in the Texas primary. Trump had influence among his lunatic faithful. The craziest among them are out there supporting crazier still candidates. And that's going to open the door in November for the other 2/3 of America, when they get a chance to vote, to express themselves. The Democrats have a good chance of taking control of the Senate as well as the House. And this would, of course, make Stephen Chung reach for his own box of tissues and begin crying, because it's over for MAGA and for Trump at that moment.
I'm Joanna Coles. Welcome to the Daily Beast podcast. Today's guest is David Rothkopf, our expert on foreign affairs, global affairs, and, well, what on earth is happening in Iran? What's about to happen in Cuba? What's happening on the White House lawn? It's all a lot. Anyway, David and I will get into it. Before we do, just a reminder, we are independent media. We love your support. Please press, if you haven't done, the subscription button and become a member of the Daily Beast community. There are lots of benefits, all of which are explained to you, but you get extra content and you get to know when we've just dropped a new podcast. Anyway, David Rothkopf is in the house. Let's get on with it. David Rothkopf.
Welcome back, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see that since I've been away, you have been promoted by Stephen Chung, who is in the White House doing something somewhere, though who knows what. I think a lot of eating. You've been promoted from a no-name cuck, which is what he called you last time we were talking.
Yes.
And he's now calling you, he's saying that you play pretend as a foreign policy expert. Definitely not playing pretend.
No.
But in reality, you're just a loser who's jealous of President Trump and the rest of the administration.
I know, I wish I could be more like that fat old dying lunatic, but yeah, sure.
Well, we can talk about that in a moment. But Stephen goes on to say we do consequential work, which is sort of true, while he sobs in front of the computer screen with an empty tissue box to catch his tears of sorrow. I think we should call this Tears of Sorrow with David Rothkopf. We'll call that today.
Look,
Stephen Chung, we're naming this after you. Tears of Sorrow with David Rothkopf.
Who knew Stephen Chung had such a poetic heart? It's poetic imagery.
I think it is poetic. It's better than Blithering Idiot, which I've had. But one just takes this as...
You are not a blithering idiot. You are a light unto the world. We are glad you are back in the chair you belong in, because you want to know something. The world is going to shit. And people need to talk about it. This is therapy for everybody.
It is sort of therapy. It's certainly therapy for me.
Yeah.
I'm a bit disconcerted, though, that we've got a very good new producer who's supposed to be a technical whiz, but he's now positioned the microphone so you can't see my new T-shirt. When I was in the UK, thinking of the podcast and needing a wardrobe refresh, I bought some more T-shirts, but you can't see this one, and it's rather good because it's got a very good gold sort of pattern on it. Anyway.
No, Trump would love that
T-shirt.
T-shirt.
To him. I think he would. Well, he'd like it because it's gold, obviously,
exactly.
Like his phones, which have had, sadly, not very good reviews.
Well, that's in part because they're crappy and made in China and 3 generations old. And
but David, I think you're missing the point that they were created, they were imagineered in America.
They were imagineered, and there is a sticker
on
the back that shows a facsimile of the American flag missing some stripes, because who cares about that stuff? The suckers who are buying these phones are getting a phone. And so shut up and let's move on to the next thing, is the view of the Trump team behind the phones, because this scam is over and there's other scams to be done.
Other scams to be done. Well, we're going to talk about his scams. We're going to talk about his health. We've got a lot to get through today. But first, I guess we should start where else in the Lone Star State. That would be a good flag for them because it's much easier than the entire Stars and Stripes. The Lone Star State, where Donald Trump, as we know, endorsed senatorial wannabe Ken Paxton, the Republican former AG of Texas, who'd already been impeached by his own party. And miraculously, he won against John Cornyn, the sitting senator for Texas. So there's going to be a real old bake-off in the election in the fall.
Well, look, I mean, if Trump troubles you, and I suspect for some of our listeners, he's a troubling figure, you should see this as a positive sign. Because James Tallarico is going to be the next senator from Texas. You're going to have a Democrat senator from Texas. And that's good news. But the reason it's happening is because MAGA has chosen this moment when its ranks are the smallest it's been in 8 years or however long it's existed, when its poll ratings on literally every single issue that Trump is involved in are lower than they've ever been, are all underwater, when independents are turning on them, when they are in the worst possible shape they could be in, they're saying, yeah, let's double down on that, which has got to be, in like the DSM-5 or something as a form of insanity. Because they are literally saying, we've got an unpopular president who people don't like because he's corrupt. Let's get a candidate in Texas who is also corrupt. This president was impeached. This candidate was impeached. This president has treated women terribly. This candidate, who is a champion of Christian values, has been divorced by his wife on biblical grounds. Biblical grounds. She's not even saying, he's a scumbag. She's saying, no, the Bible says you can't be married to a guy like Ken Paxton. Okay? The Republican Party hated this guy so much until Trump backed him that they were running ads, which they had to take down last night after Paxton won, which said Ken Paxton was a terrible attorney general, and we had the highest murder rate in 30 years in Texas because Ken Paxton was the attorney general. So, the Republicans are now going to have to sit on their hands. John Cornyn going to have to sit on his hands. The MAGA faithful have picked a guy, and Tallarico is going to reap the benefits of this. One last thing, though. Then Paxton goes after Tallarico last night, and he says he is a threat to our way of lives. And do you know why he said he's a threat? Two things. One, he's a vegan. Oh my God, he's a vegan. That is definitely a threat to our way of life.
I think that we'll find that the vice president's wife is vegetarian, right? And JD has even said that he partakes of vegetarian food.
Yeah, for sure. There may be vegans in MAGA, but then he goes further. And this is the one that I really like the best. Because Trump and the MAGA faithful have landed on this idea that somehow Tallarico has said that God has 6 genders, and that he believes that God, and Paxton last night said that God is non-binary. Okay, but I think what they really heard Tallarico talk about was people being cisgendered, which they just didn't get, and they're doubling down on the fundamental MAGA belief that God has specific genitalia, I guess. I mean, that's where they are.
But David, what does this actually say about what people in Texas are looking for in their politicians? So they've had John Cornyn, who's a very right-wing. I think he comes across as the 12th, in terms of his voting record, he's the 12th most right-wing senator currently in the Senate, soon to leave, of course, in the fall. But what does this say about people in Texas? Because whatever else you say about Ken Paxton, his flaws were all out there. This wasn't secrets that were dripping out. He'd been impeached by his own party. He'd been divorced, as you say, biblically, or on a biblical scale, perhaps, by his wife. Of course, he gets the Trump endorsement, and Trump has been, dilly-dallying. Should he, shouldn't he? What should he do? He was trying to play the Senate. What does it actually say about the people of Texas that they turned out and voted for Ken Paxton, who seems, by all accounts, to be a thoroughly unpleasant, corrupt individual?
I don't think it says anything about the people of Texas. Think it says
Really?
something. No, I think it says something about the people who show up and vote in a Republican primary in Texas. And of course, that's not the majority of Texans. It's not the majority of Republicans. It's the most extreme members of the Republican Party. And this is the problem. Those are the people who still support Trump. While, Trump's underwater in almost everything, and about 2/3 of Americans, feel he's doing a lousy job at most things, there's still 1/3 of Americans who will follow him into the fires of hell. And those people are the ones most likely to vote in a Republican primary. And that's why this little period that we're in here is so distortionary, because you've got everybody going, oh, look, Trump had influence in the Indiana primary, or, oh, look, Trump had influence in the Texas primary. But it's Trump had influence among his lunatic faithful. The craziest among them are out there supporting crazier still candidates. And that's going to open the door in November for the other 2/3 of America, when they get a chance to vote, to express themselves. And I think it's looking more likely. Yesterday's big headline is the Democrats have a good chance of taking control of the Senate as well as the House. And this would, of course, make Stephen Chung reach for his own box of tissues and begin crying, because it's over for MAGA and for Trump at that moment.
You ever realize how many customers slip through the cracks? Missed calls, follow-ups that never happen? It adds up fast. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the business communication system built so you never miss a call. Your entire team can handle calls and texts from one shared number, so no more mixed messages or dropped conversations. Everyone sees the full thread, replies are faster, and customers actually feel taken care of. Quo works wherever you are, right from your phone or computer. Keep your existing number, add teammates in minutes, sync your CRM, and let the call routing handle itself as you scale. It's easy. Calls, text, voicemail, transcripts, and contact details all in one clean view, so your team always has the full picture and can show up for every customer conversation, ensuring a seamless and more personalized experience. Money is on the line. Always say hello with Quo. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/beast. That's quo.com/beast. It's over. Okay, I'm still stuck on the fact that you just used the word distortionary. Did you just make that up, or is that actually a word?
I don't know. You're English. It's your language. Tell me if I got it wrong. I'm from New Jersey.
Well,
in New Jersey, we use the words that come out of our heads, and we don't get all caught up in the whole thing. But
well,
sure.
I fully understood what you meant, and I like it as a word. I've literally never heard it before. So we will do but by the end of the podcast, our producers will have done some literary investigative work and discovered
and
whether or not
asked Siri whether it's really a word.
Exactly, or chatty. Yes. All right. So do you think, because I think it's at the polls put them at 45 versus 45, James Tallarico, the seminarian.
No. The poll I saw yesterday made it Tallarico is something like 46 or 48, and Paxton's 41. In fact, it was closer with Cornyn. And that's
definitely closer with Cornyn. That's why it's so interesting that Trump plumped for Paxton.
It's not interesting. Trump's not interesting. Trump is completely predictable. Trump is about Trump. Anybody who supports Trump is what Trump likes. People who are critical of Trump, Trump doesn't like. Even people who are supportive of Trump, 92% of the time, like the John Cornyns, they end up getting thrown under the bus for having not been supportive 100% of the time. And
and there was a quote I read in the Times today saying, from a Republican on the Hill, saying we're loyal, and Trump still stabs us in the back. And you think, actually, he's stabbing you in the chest in full view of everybody, and nobody is doing anything.
Who has Trump been loyal to?
He's been he's been loyal to nobody.
In
We
his
know
life?
this.
I mean, did you go to Trump's son's wedding? You probably had a better chance of showing up than Trump did this weekend. He didn't go to his own son's damn wedding. He's never
Well,
been loyal to a wife. He hasn't been loyal to his kids. He has never been loyal to his business partners, who he sues on a regular basis. He has not been loyal to his base. And folks, above all, the biggest betrayal of Donald Trump is to the people of the United States, who have regularly been undermined, attacked, and hurt by Trump, including especially MAGA, who depend on veterans hospitals for care, or who depend on rural medical centers that he shut down, or who depend on aid programs to help get their kids to school, or who depend on jobs being created in their communities, or who like to go hunting and want to go out into a world that's not destroyed by the environmental depredations of the fossil fuel industry. Trump is disloyal to everybody and loyal to nobody.
so if you were John Cornyn's friend, what would you advise him to do in the few months that he has left in the Senate to make his point?
Well, I would say,
What a musical phone. Is that a Trump phone? David, are you keeping a secret Trump phone for us that plays lyrical tunes?
no, it's just an old Apple phone, and it shouldn't have rung, and I apologize. And
Well, I'm
let's
just
get back
impressed you know how to put such lyrical ringtones on it.
Steve, right. Okay. Look, what I would
But
say to John Cornyn.
what should Joe? I mean, Trump isn't the only one that wants retribution against his political enemies. I mean, John Cornyn must be absolutely furious at this point.
Yeah, but he won't. Last night he said, "I've always voted for the Republican ticket, so I'll vote for Paxton." He's one of these, sort of dyed-in-the-wool, rock-ribbed Republicans who goes along with the team, which is one of the strengths of the Republican Party. And he probably will not. I mean, will Thomas Massie go after Trump? Yeah, he's promised to do that. Will Tom Tillis go after Trump? Yeah, in his own kind of insipid way.
Well, Tom Tillis went after Paxton last night, saying he shouldn't be in the Senate. It was ridiculous.
Right.
He was deeply corrupt.
We'll hear some of that, and who knows, maybe Cornyn will be a little bit more critical. But, my advice for Cornyn is like, fuck off. You've been supporting Trump this whole time. You got us into this mess. It's your silence while he was destroying your party and the country that gave him power. And by the way, I extend this to all of Cornyn's buddies, including especially the Bush family. There was a Republican establishment. And when Trump came in and posed a threat to everything they allegedly believed in, they, for the most part, not Dick Cheney and his daughter, but everybody else, rolled over and played dead. They are responsible for this. So I get, John Cornyn, go off, play golf, go on some boards, make some millions and millions of more dollars, and think maybe a little bit about how you made this happen.
Right. He sowed the seeds of his own demise. All right. So Trump's own demise, physically, we can see him in plain sight deteriorating. He had his third visit in 13 months to Walter Reed yesterday. He came back and he said he'd passed everything perfectly. But it's very clear he's not in great health. And we know in 2 weeks he becomes 80. He'll be the oldest president ever to have served. Thoughts on the state of his health, his mental health, and why he keeps going back to Walter Reed?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wish you hadn't, at the hour of the morning that we record this, made me think about Donald Trump's health or his exam or padding around with his ass hanging out in one of those little robes at Walter Reed.
Do you think they make him wear one of those robes that we all have to put on? I always hate it when they say, can you put on this gown?
Yeah, which is just a humiliation device, right?
Do you think he has to do that, or do you think he gets a special gown, or he's allowed to wear his own sort of toweling robe?
I don't know. It's a great question, Joanna, and it's what's maybe one of the world's leading journalists. But
I am intrigued by small details like that, because Trump in a kind of drab cotton robe that you tie behind the back, but you can't tie, and then you expose yourself unwittingly to the entire waiting room is something I'm just intrigued by.
Look, here's the thing. Something is wrong with Trump. We know something is wrong with Trump. You've had doctors on here who've talked about something being wrong with Trump. And, he has gone from one visit a year to a visit every 6 months. You don't go from one visit a year to a visit every 6 months because everything's going good. Now,
I think it's more, David, I hate to correct you, but I think it's more frequent than that. It's his third visit in 13 months.
okay, well, but you get my point. The point is
Yeah.
he is now going more frequently, and there has to be reasons he's going more frequently. And, the White House, which you like to say that he was super healthy, finally got around to admitting that he has chronic venous insufficiency or whatever that's called, which
Don't we all, darling? Don't we all?
yeah. Not
Feeling
me.
very chronically insufficient
I don't have
today.
cankles because
Well-
that's what causes the cankles, and Lord knows what's causing the blotches on his hands. The further hair loss, the fattening, the inability to stand up. He could barely stand up when he was with Xi Jinping. He can't walk up a ramp. He can't walk down a ramp. He can't. He falls asleep in meetings. He falls asleep everywhere.
Well, he falls asleep standing up, which is quite a feat.
It is, but like a horse. It's kind of amazing. But
Which is one of the animals he has to identify, I think,
well,
on the
on
MOCA
his
test,
thing,
the
although
Montreal
as we know,
Cognitive
he
Test.
doesn't like animals, right? He doesn't.
Well, he doesn't like any living, breathing thing, right, that steals attention from him.
I think that's right. I was just reading some story about somebody suggesting that he have a dog when he goes to the White House, and he's like, "Nah, I don't like dogs. I don't want to have dogs." Anyway, the point is, he's sick, and he is decaying. He is declining before our eyes, and this just goes back. Let's go back, to the Paxton story and MAGA doubling down. MAGA doubling down on Donald Trump as his polls are falling might be seen as an act of loyalty. MAGA doubling down on Donald Trump as his polls are falling, he has no good ideas, and he is physically decaying before their eyes, is an act of lunacy. And I would say, right next to Trump at Walter Reed in the intensive care ward ought to be MAGA, because MAGA is on its last legs if it thinks that doubling down on this decaying, suppurating, mentally deficient lunatic is the answer to their problems. And yet they seem to. And I know you've got I love when we do this because, you've always got a very carefully worked out, you have teams, 20, 30 producers there, and they've worked out a schedule.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I wanted to contradict you on one thing or push back on one thing with the words of Jeff Bezos, who said that...
Oh, well, there's a reliable source.
Jeff Bezos, who said that actually Trump did have some good ideas and that he was showing more maturity and discipline in Trump too, in his second administration.
Jeff Bezos has revealed himself to be a man of no character. He is rich, he is powerful, he is smart. I have sat next to Jeff Bezos at dinner and talked to Jeff Bezos long ago, long before he was a billionaire. And I got to tell you, he is a smart guy, but he is using none of his powers for good. He is literally just trying to enrich himself further. And he went after Trump. He went after Mamdani the other day, saying, asking billionaires to pay more taxes wouldn't help anybody, wouldn't help a school teacher in Queens, he said. Jeff Bezos is going to be one of those sort of cartoon character versions of the robber barons of the early part of the 21st century that will be studied and you can imagine the cartoons that will be drawn of these people because they are rapacious, characterless. And if there were $1 trillion in their bank account and they saw a penny lying in the street, they would go for it. And they would knock an old lady down to get it.
Good Lord. Okay. Do you never use Amazon, David? Do you never use Amazon? A telltale silence, my friend. A telltale silence.
Look, I do, but but I don't feel good about it. Does
That's the pathetic liberal response.
what am I
It's a
supposed to
pathetic
do?
liberal
What am I
response.
supposed to do? I live practically in the woods.
I think
Somebody's got to bring food to my house.
I think your house with 3 swimming pools.
Oh, for fuck's sake! It's like, okay,
You're not crying into it. If only Stephen Chung could see your well-appointed house, he would know you were not sobbing into an empty
we
tissue
got a
box.
bunch of MAGA people on my street. Let me put it that way. I don't want to name names, but some of them are real famous, big-time MAGA people.
I think Jeff Bezos's point about New York actually was that New York's school system spends the most on any pupil in the country, and still they have depressingly low scores for reading and math.
They may indeed, and they, Zoran Mamdani has been the mayor for 5 months. Prior to that, we had Eric Adams, terrible. Bill de Blasio, terrible. We had bad mayors running this city from both political parties. And the reality is Mamdani is making some good progress. He is going to be providing people with free pre-K. He is, making it possible for people to get better healthcare, better transportation. Even the Knicks are winning. So it's really hard to come down on Zoran Mamdani if you know anything about New York.
Do you think that's why the Knicks are winning? I was thinking it was to do with Jalen Brunson, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
maybe I'm
the
wrong.
fact that you know who Jalen Brunson is, I'm going to bow down.
Do you know I'm actually going to one of the final games next week, which I'm extremely excited about.
Do you know how much that costs? Miss 3 swimming pools. Do you know
All right,
that
we've gone off track.
Do you know
We've
what
gone off track.
Do you know what a courtside seat at a Knicks finals game is going for online?
No, what are they going for? Is it more than the seats for the UFC fight on the lawn of the White House, which you must have walked past that incredible edifice that's going on?
I'm so glad you brought it up. But first of all, yeah, it's more than that. And yeah, it's more than the World Cup. There was a seat sold on the court for a Knicks finals game that went for $150,000.
Well, I didn't say I was sitting courtside, David.
Well,
I didn't say I was sitting courtside.
And with Zoran says he's going to sit in the nosebleeds. And so maybe you'll see him up there in the nosebleeds. You're a woman of the people. But you're right. Let's talk about this bizarre thing that's going up that costs $60 million so that Trump can hold a cage match on the south lawn of the White House, ostensibly to celebrate America, really to celebrate Trump, where some of his buddies are getting free seats, and otherwise the seats are costing thousands of dollars, and it's going to be this kind of MAGA love fest. But there's a picture this morning that showed the cage or whatever this thing is.
Yeah,
that
it's
they're
a sort
building.
of huge semicircle.
Well,
isn't it?
I
It looked
think
like
the
it had
lights
sort of
go up over
balloons
the
on it.
semicircle and stuff, and
Right.
and it looks a little like Wembley, if you know what I'm referring to there. But
Do you mean Wembley Stadium?
yes, exactly. But
I think I might know what you're referring to. Although I saw the Stones play there. I haven't been there for a sporting game, but I have been there for Rolling Stones concerts.
well, that's cool. But look, there was a picture, and it showed this cage being built, $60 million. We don't know who's paying for it. We have no idea where that money is coming from. Next to it was where he paid.
Won't it be coming from the television rights? I mean, UFC is a very successful
knows?
business.
Are they going to pay for the Secret Service? Are they going to pay for restoring the South Lawn? Are they going to pay for, who knows? But there is this huge monstrosity, which is a national embarrassment, going up there that everybody should be crying out. John Cornyn, you want something to do? Pick it in front of the White House. Say, please don't embarrass us with this event. It's going to happen anyway.
David, let me ask you something. Are you being a bit snotty here? I mean, UFC
No.
is hugely popular sport. Would you feel better if it was a nice game of tennis with
First
the
of all, there's
polite
been a
Mr.
tennis
Federer?
court on the South Lawn of the White House since Jimmy Carter. People go out. I played on that tennis court. People go out. They play a nice game of tennis. They go back in. It's for the White House, okay? It's not for public spectacle. The White House is the people's house. The idea of the White House is to be a symbol to the American people. It used to be in the days of Lincoln and so where you could just walk in and say hello to the president. That became impossible for a bunch of other reasons. But other presidents realized that it was a symbol of something. And in Trump's case, it is a symbol of excess, vulgarity, corruption, violence, hatred, division, all the things that he stands for. But, and this is the point I was trying to make, next to this is where Jackie Kennedy's Rose Garden was paved over so they could turn it into a patio area that looked like Mar-a-Lago. And next to that is the obscene $1.x billion ballroom for billionaires, plus the secret hospital and bunker that's underneath it that Trump wants to build, plus the drone launching station on the top that Trump says will also be a great place for snipers to shoot at people on the streets of Washington. And this is all, the White House, the one-time symbol, being defaced and defiled by this lunatic megalomaniac who is building a 250-foot arch to himself next to Arlington Cemetery, who is paving the streets of Washington, or that he travels on, in gold while he shuts down hospitals and schools, has just released a plan, Joanna, you're blocks from this, where he's going to remake Penn Station, and in the middle of it, there's a big tribute to Donald Trump. This guy makes Nero look like he was subdued and had good taste.
He really does do that. What did you make of the video yesterday that they released of him staring and walking around and sort of knocking at the columns of the White House? I think he'd returned from his hospital visit, probably ecstatic at having been given 150%, 200% good news on his health. But he spent 7 minutes looking at the columns, which are, of course, quite plain, the columns of the White House.
Boy.
Do you think that he thinks he can gold them up? Do you think he's thinking
back in the days of ancient Rome and Greece, all those things that we think of as white columns weren't white columns, right? They were painted very colorful, and a lot of them had gold on the top and gold on the bottom. We've already know that Trump is against the style of column that they use in Washington, because they use Ionian or some other kind of more plain style, and he wants Corinthian because it's got a lot of acanthus leaves out of the top, and that's super exciting to him. And I can only imagine that he would think, the White House might look better with a little bit of gold out here too. Maybe we could make gold columns. Maybe we could pave the driveway streets of gold. Maybe we could change the uniforms of all the people that greet people at the White House so they look like Joanna Coles' t-shirt.
Well, you can't see my t-shirt because of the
microphone.
Because
the light is shining off
I'm going to
of it.
move. I'm going to move to the left.
No, it's beautiful.
I'm going to move to the left so you can see my t-shirt.
It's beautiful.
I know. Maybe I've become unduly influenced by Donald Trump, and that's why it appealed to me.
Every
that
single
hadn't even
week.
dawned
How
on
many
me.
times
that's
do you
scary.
do inside Trump's brain?
Well, inside Trump's head,
Whatever
which is
it
different
is,
to inside his brain. 3 times a week, and maybe that's he's subversive. He's influencing me, and I didn't realize what was going on. That's a little scary.
It's too much.
It's too much, isn't it? It's too many times to go in
talk
there.
to me 3 times a week. You don't.
All right.
All
right.
Just like move on, because what's going to happen? You're going no Trump. First of all, there's less evidence that Trump even has a brain going on in that head. But in a year or two, when Trump is like drooling in some ward someplace, what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about J.D. Vance.
Inside Vance's head?
J.D. Vance. We're inside J.D. Vance's bearded head. Okay, so listen. Don Jr. got married at the weekend, and
Mazel tov.
And we've not seen any pictures yet, so I'm assuming they've sold the pictures. There were lots of pictures of the guests posting pictures of themselves, but no pictures of the married couple. So I'm assuming they've done a deal.
Yeah, no, there'll be a big deal with Gun and Dead Animal magazine, which is where it's. There were these leaks that came out that his wife really wanted a White House wedding, and she couldn't get it. They wouldn't give her a White House wedding, and to me, that's kind of so sad. it's such a, that she's like, okay, I'm going to marry the son of the president and we're going to get a White House wedding. And then, no, it's in the Bahamas. And then he's not even coming. And she's like, damn, all that I wanted. It's such a, I don't know. It's a,
Well, you don't know. She might be relieved. She might be relieved that Donald
really,
didn't turn up
really,
because,
really,
well,
that she's marrying Don Jr., okay?
okay, Don Senior didn't turn up. That's a bit of a slap.
Oh, God. I mean, can you imagine anything worse?
So she could. I would guess maybe the argument for not getting married at the White House is that the ballroom makes it a bit of a demolition site.
The ballroom, the cage for the cage match, everything that's going on there. And I mean, have you looked while you were away? He decided that he didn't want the reflecting fool to reflect anymore, and he's painted that to look like a kiddie pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial. That's being painted blue, and
yeah, that's disturbing.
It's. And he said, "I'm redoing the fountains, and I'm redoing the." What is going through his mind? The funny thing is, he thinks he's a master builder, and the reality is that everything that he has ever built has been super tacky. He's actually not a master builder. He's a defiler, a defacer, a debaser. And that's what's happening right now at the White House.
Well, the other thing that's going on in the background, of course, is in theory negotiations over Iran. You remember 12 weeks ago we went into Iran.
I don't remember. What?
And there was no specific reason other than perhaps regime change. It was never really explained to us why we were doing this. And now we seem to be at a point where we are negotiating to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which wasn't closed when we started bombing, but the Iranians quickly realized they could close it and they had more power than they'd actually realized. What are you hearing from your intelligence sources and your sources in the sort of foreign affairs world about how this is going to resolve? I mean, there are 1,500 tankers in the Strait.
Look, Trump's going to cut a deal. Just like, the so-called Gaza deal. Did you see the story today that the Board of Peace in Gaza has a little problem, which is the $14 billion everybody committed to it. No one has given any money to it.
That doesn't surprise me, right?
Yeah, so it's not real, right? Well, how was the Gaza deal structured? The Gaza deal was structured we can solve this one small thing now. We'll have a 22-point plan. We'll solve those things in the future. Deal. In other words, all the tough stuff was punted. The same is true with this Iran deal. In fact, over the weekend, some pro-Republican said, I think it was Frank Luntz, said, we're 95% of a way to a deal. I understand the only two outstanding things are what to do with Iranian nukes and what to do about the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, the two most important central elements.
Right, the things that really count, that are really hard, we're not going to do. But, essentially, I think what Trump wanted was, let's do a deal where we get the Strait open. We'll give the Iranians some money for getting the Strait open, and there was $25 billion allegedly pledged, plus lifting sanctions on Iran so they would be able to make more money selling their own oil. And essentially we were paying. Trump didn't like the idea that there would be a toll paid at the Strait of Hormuz. It used to be free, by the way, but he is the one who created this situation. So he thought, well, let's give him a big lump sum, just like Obama did back in the day. Well, anyway, let's overlook that. We'll just say that this is better than that deal. And then we're just going to punt everything else. There are a few problems. One of them was he said that Israel would get out of Lebanon, and almost immediately the Israelis said, no, we won't. Two, those things that they didn't resolve are actually much more difficult. And by the way, what I have heard is that the deal that they were going to strike on enriched uranium was that they would take the highly enriched uranium out, but Iran would maintain the ability to enrich uranium, and it would keep the less enriched uranium, which, of course, if it maintains the ability to enrich, it can always enrich further, right? It knows how to do it. So that was a bit of a head fake also.
Why isn't there more outcry about this, David? I mean, there's There is nothing that America has come out of in this situation that puts it ahead of where we were when he started bombing.
It's a good question. This is a catastrophe. It was a terrible idea. It has cost billions and billions of dollars, many, many billions more than what they have alleged it has cost. It has cost human lives here. It has cost 3,000 lives in Lebanon. It has cost 4,000 or 5,000 lives in Iran. It has cost the region its stability. It has cost us all in terms of higher energy prices, higher fertilizer prices, higher food prices. It has
higher air prices. I mean, going back to the UK, the air prices have doubled.
And a lot of companies, Lufthansa, other companies have simply canceled flights because they simply can't afford it anymore. And it has, undermined U.S. interests, of course, in the region. And here we are. The deal that he is going to strike, no matter what, is going to be less good than both the Obama deal struck on nukes in 2015, which he pulled out of, and it is going to be less good than where we are on February 27th. And he knows it. And now he's getting heat from both sides. There are people saying, just pull out and stop. And he's finding himself unable to do that. And then there are people like the far right, including John Bolton and some others, are like, no, this is the time to double down. And since Trump has no plan, no strategy, he went in with no advice, his advisors are in sort of yes, sir mode. One day it's peace. And then what did we do over the weekend? We bombed them. And then we said, oh, yeah, we were bombing them in self-defense. Now, this is chutzpah, right? Here is a country that has launched an illegal war against Iran, us. And we are saying that by bombing them, we're defending ourselves. But, this is a confused mismatch. And he desperately, desperately wants to change the subject. And so he is going to come up with some deal which he thinks he can sell, even though anybody who looks at it is going to know that it's a lousy deal and that we're worse off than when this all started. And then what is he going to do? He's going to go after Cuba. He made some noises at a commencement speech that maybe Panama's in the crosshairs. He talks about Greenland again. He'll do anything to distract from this because it has been a complete fiasco. It goes back to our first point about Paxton and about MAGA. They're doubling down on a guy who may have once had a little bit of that sort of bullshit that allowed him to sell stuff to the American people. And he's got no tricks left in his bag. Everything he does is turning to crap. He can't sell it anymore. And MAGA's like, yeah, we're behind this guy all the way. He's literally, since he took over, what's his big success? What has he done that is good? Even some of the things that he's trying to do, like redistricting, and he got pushed back in South Carolina over the weekend. The court pushed him back in Alabama, and there are signs that some people in the Republican Party are realizing this is a problem, and it's just making it even harder for him to get anything done.
Oh, we've got another 2.5 years to go.
Maybe if he lives that long.
Do you think, where are you on the scale? Inside Trump's head yesterday, Michael Wolff and I debated whether or not we thought Trump would last through his presidency. I thought he would because I think he has that hunger that just keeps going. Michael thought that he would keel over.
Look, who knows, right? I think what we know 100% for sure is that he will become more diminished with each passing week. What we know 100% for sure is that he is not up to the job now, which means that there will be a president for however long he remains in office who is incapable of doing the job, who becomes less capable of doing the job with each passing week. And he is surrounded by sycophants and idiots. I mean, we haven't talked about RFK Jr. picking up a handful of snakes over the weekend.
How could we have forgotten to mention that? That was an amazing video with poor Cheryl squeaking in the corner.
Are they biting?
Honey, let it go. Oh my God.
He's such a fucking weirdo. He's a heroin addict and he's got a brain worm, but this stuff with the dead animals, with the bear in the park and the whale
he's like
head
a reverse. He's a bit like a reverse Dr. Dolittle.
because he's the kid who was in your fifth grade class, who was pulling the legs off of bugs in the last row of the classroom, and the teacher was going, "I'm going to look the other way because he's RFK Jr." This guy is freaking demented. And I got to tell you something, Joanna. It's kind of funny to make fun of RFK Jr. because, he's a heroin addict who said he used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats, and that's why he doesn't believe in germ theory. Are we kidding ourselves? And he's cutting all these programs that are important. And yet, what else is going on in the world right now, Joanna? The most worrisome outbreak of Ebola virus that we have seen anywhere, a new strain that doesn't respond to things. We already have lived in our lifetimes recently through a pandemic, and every part of the U.S. government that could be used to prevent a pandemic has been shut down or gutted by Trump, by Elon Musk, by RFK Jr., and I should add, and I really want to add this, by Mr. Normal, the guy who's going to say, "I'm the sensible face of MAGA," Marco Rubio, who shut down AID, which is going to result in 14 million people dying around the world, and which has resulted in the spread of this Ebola virus. And if you go and you read and you talk to people who are involved, they will tell you that had the U.S. had its prior capabilities in place in Africa, it would have been identified sooner. It would have been responded to quicker. There would have been more resources. Now, I'm not saying this Ebola virus is going to spread.
Well, it's already spread, actually. It has already spread within Africa.
Yeah, no, I understand. But what I'm saying is, and now the U.S. is setting up a station to handle Americans who get infected with it over there, and they're scrambling to find the Ebola virus experts that they fired. To go and to deal with this thing. And so, at every level, at every single level, what we are going to have is a weaker United States of America that is in greater danger than it was. And I will point out one other thing, also a story that's just not going to get covered, and people don't care about, foreign policy. And you say, well, why don't people care about, this thing or that thing that's happening? In the past couple of days, Trump has said that he is going to shut down more programs that stop Russia from interfering in the United States, and he is going to cut down on the number of planes and ships that are available to NATO to defend itself against Russia, even as it is just months after the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine quit because she said we had switched sides over to Russia, even as, So all I'm saying here is I could give you a list of 15 ways that we have become more vulnerable to Russia under Trump, or that we have become more vulnerable to Chinese growth and we've become less able to compete under Trump, or that we have become more vulnerable to pandemics, or we have become more vulnerable to disease within our own society, or inequality in our society has grown, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This, if Trump dropped dead tomorrow, I, like everybody else, would go and enjoy the party. I have to admit it. But I'm less worried about that than I am about the continued deterioration, not of one old man, but of an entire country because of the damage he has done.
I can see we normally talk on a Monday. Wednesdays, David, is even gloomier than Mondays, David. Wow.
That's why my nickname as a child was Eeyore.
So, David, the good news is, there is good news after today's podcast. Distortionary is, it turns out, a word.
I knew it was.
It is a word.
I knew it was.
You knew it was. All right.
I just wanted to play along with your bit.
Okay, well, you're just fancier than me. You just have longer words.
I do have a fine New Jersey public school education.
David, you're Ivy League. Don't deny it. I know you went to Columbia. And that's where you learn to use these fancy words. Anyway, I'd never heard of distortionary. I understood, obviously, what it meant. but it felt very long, even for a podcast with a man who's sobbing into an empty box of tissues. I don't know where Stephen Chung gets that from.
Yeah. Well, the fact that Stephen Chung is such a fan of this podcast really warms my heart.
No, I think he's a fan of you, specifically you, David. You've gone from a no name to...
Maybe he's secretly in love with me.
I think he's projecting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe he is. And Stephen, look, all can be forgiven. I'm very happy to come join you in the White House mess.
Well, remember, he says you're jealous of the Trump administration because they're doing consequential work.
Yeah,
so
by the way, Stephen, the next insult, why don't you tell us what the consequential work is other than destroying America? Name one good thing that Donald Trump has done that has benefited the average American.
I can't stop thinking about the 1,500 tankers that are idling in the Strait of Hormuz, the incredibly long time some of those poor merchant seamen have been on board them. They haven't seen their families. I'm sure they're not living in the healthiest of conditions. And just the impact globally on the slowdown of getting oil to people. I mean, that's...
And it's not going to be fixed overnight. If Trump announces a deal this week, as I believe he will, if Trump announces a deal this week, whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, and it'll be a bad deal, it's going to take many, many months for oil prices to come down to where they were, for this backup that this unnecessary illegal war caused to be remediated. And yes, that is also a word.
David, we will see you back on Monday. But as always, a pleasure and hugely thought-provoking to talk to you.
Thank you. Same, Joanna. So glad you're back.
Thank you. Sure there's anybody as erudite as David Rothkopf once he gets whipped up into a frenzy, which he is at the moment. And his ability to just come up with lists is really astonishing to me. Anyway, I always enjoy talking to him. I want to know what your favourite bit of the conversation was. And just continuing the conversation from inside Trump's head, do you think Donald Trump will manage to live out the rest of his term? Or do you think, as Michael Wolff does, and many others, that he will simply keel over at the cabinet table? I think that he will survive. I think he has a remarkable internal combustion engine which will keep him ticking along. But we're very curious to know what you think, so tell us in the comments. Big thanks to our production team, Ryan Murray, John Romero, who's new and just getting his feet wet, Rachel Passer, Heather Passaro, and Neil Rosenhaus. See you tomorrow. We'll be back with another episode of Inside, you know where, Trump's head. So the good news is we have so many B-Beast tier members now. There are too many names to read out, and we really appreciate your support.